on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Lenell's with us in an hour and a half, so if you miss him, because the Russell show has ended and it's a Win Bag Wednesday, don't worry, he's coming back at 5:30. Talk a couple of different things with us. Andrew Marchand is going to join us at 5 o'clock. But we start today, Anthony, with Jaden Daniels appearing on a podcast with Keyshawn Johnson. We're hoping to actually catch up with Keyshawn potentially tomorrow to talk more about this conversation. But interesting stuff from Daniels as he was out. There's a couple bites that stood out. I haven't had a chance to listen to the entire interview yet. But one thing that I think was clear in watching a couple of clips is Daniels was very relaxed. I don't know whether he knew Keyshawn or he just knows of Keyshawn because, you know, if he's eating whatever meal in the LSU football facility and you turn on Fox Sports 1, like Keyshawn's been a fixture there. He's obviously formerly a fixture on ESPN for a long time as well with the morning radio show and his time spent on Monday Night Countdown and the whole deal, depending on which era of Keyshawn Johnson's media career you want to talk about. But he also just like the hullabaloo of the draft is over. Like the Jaden Daniels I got to interview on draft night, who was doing his 28th interview in an hour, versus this version of Jaden Daniels. And even like Logan and I were talking about this because they got Jaden on Command Center the day after all of the other media stuff. So it was kind of his last thing. It was the only media thing he had to do that particular day. And obviously it's Logan, it's London Fletcher, it's Smoot, it's a bunch of former players. Fred Smoot's the most disarming person that's ever walked the planet. And so it's just like a much more relaxed, easygoing Jaden Daniels. And I appreciated that because you get to see the personality a lot more and get to see who he really is a lot more than the overwhelmed because it's draft night. You're wearing this crazy suit. You got the sunglasses on. You've done 1,000 interviews. Your life has been chaos for 4 months as you've had everything scrutinized. And just to see Jaden, the kind of the version that you hear about, the relaxed, easygoing kid who's really fun and, you know, funny, affable, the whole thing, like that was cool. So I think it's a good thing for Commanders fans to check out the podcast that Keyshawn did with Jaden. But just a couple specific things stood out, and this is kind of, I think, the biggest clip that made the rounds in terms of whether or not he expects to be the week 1 starter in DC coming up this season.
Do you anticipate starting week 1?
Do I anticipate?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm confident in my abilities, but if that's a decision that they got to make, that's above
And
me.
I ain't asked you. Stop
That's what I'm
bullshit,
saying. That's
man.
that's a decision.
Do you, as the number 2 pick in the draft, anticipate starting?
I mean,
Or you think they're gonna bring you along slowly, so to speak?
from what I heard, when they said whenever I'm ready, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So whenever I feel like I'm ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, I didn't start. I'm trying to think when I start. I probably didn't start till midway during the year.
Yeah, they didn't tell me like, oh, like you got to start week 1. They just said, whenever you ready, like you ready. Whenever you feel ready, we feel you ready. We're gonna throw you out there.
I love that. I love the lack of pressure, but also it's not really a carrot and a stick approach because there's no stick, but there's a carrot. It's like, hey, man, when you're ready, it's here for you. How bad you want it? How quickly can you get ready? There's no big deal if you're not. Like, no pressure. You don't have to fake anything. You don't have to try to do anything that's out of your norm. Just, you know, do what you got to do to get ready. And when you're ready, job's yours. I think that's an ideal situation for a starter to go into, as opposed to, look, I think Caleb Williams is going to be just fine going in, but like Caleb Williams is a starter in Chicago. And then you have you have the whole spectrum with the top 3 guys because Drake May, they might say like, you're not starting. It's Jacoby's job. When you're better than Jacoby, if you can beat him out, then you can play. Good luck with that because he's Jacoby Brissett and he's pretty solid NFL quarterback. So I think that it's a great situation for Jaden to go into, and the fact that he knows the score going in is fantastic. I think what the interesting part becomes, Anthony, is what does that mean for the next month? what does that mean for the springtime and how they actually divide the reps? Because if I was Washington and I was Cliff and I was Dan, I would give him at least a split, if not the predominant majority of the number one reps in the spring to find out just how ready he is.
Yeah, and I would probably lean towards, the split, just because if Marcus Mariota has to be that guy, then, at least he would have gotten some of those reps. But I think back to what Sam Howell did last summer when, Ron said that he was going to be QB1. I would think Jaden would just, take the time to probably, try to link up with the Terry McLaurin, the Jahan Dotsons, toss around the pigskin with those guys, get familiar, get comfortable with those guys, and show those, QB1 leadership, things that you want to see out of your quarterback one. That's what I would want to see, like, during this, like, next month where, after they finish rookie minicamp?
Rookie minicamps first, and then they have the voluntary minicamps, the voluntary OTAs, and then your veteran minicamp sometime in early June.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting month for sure, but I'm expecting Jaden just to, try to do the work outside of it, because the way, first of all, Keyshawn phrased the question, it's sort of kind of like it was a question to, like, make headlines. Oh, he said he wanted to be QB1. Oh, he expects to be QB1. And the manner in which he went about, navigating the answer, I really like. Wasn't really no sense of, like, entitlement, like, oh, this is my job. Like, nah, it was more so I'm going to put the work in. And if the Commanders see fit that I'm the best man for the job, then I'm going to go out there. I'm going to produce. I'm going to be Jaden Daniels. And if you guys forgot, just turn on that tape.
Right, and that's how he's been the entire time. He's just been like, I'm here to work. We'll see where the work takes us. And I think that's the absolute best approach. And basically any endeavor in life is like, do it for something I try to remind myself is like, do it to be good at it. And the results should come. And that's how he definitely approaches things. I do think it's a challenge for these guys to get together and try to do any kind of major work until they go through some stuff with Cliff.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any idea what this offense is going to be yet. And so they could go out and run routes and just get a feel for each other. And that would be very helpful. I don't know how it'd be interesting to talk to Santana or one of the former quarterbacks, like a Colt or whoever we could get on to talk about, like, how helpful would it be to just go out and be like, Jaden, teach us something you did at LSU. Okay, cool. We're going to run it. Terry, take your favorite play. If you can get Zach Ertz out there, that's probably helpful. Be like, Cliff likes it this way. So you get one guy who's been in the offense. And at this point, I think they have playbooks. I'm pretty sure they do. I mean, there's the great anecdote in Kimes' piece about how Jaden got his playbook and then was, like, calling out plays on the plane. So there's definitely, like, some element of a playbook that's starting to circulate that will continue to evolve throughout the spring and into the summer, and then ultimately get pared down during the season into game plan specific stuff. But, even if they have some classroom time, whatever, they haven't been coached on the field by their coaches yet. And so I would love for them to, obviously, if you can get some extra time together, some chemistry, get to know each other off the field, that helps your relationship on the field for sure. And then ultimately this summer, once you've gone through the spring and gotten some of that coaching, can you put it together without the coaches in Florida, in wherever, in LA, wherever these guys are training, to become a little bit more cohesive as you head into the spring. So, yeah, I love that. A couple more things from Jaden Daniels next. He did talk about the Topgolf visit. Also talked about Cliff Kingsbury. And I think this is an interesting one, too. Talked about his relationship with C.J. Stroud, who had a tremendous rookie season, of course, last year for the Houston Texans. We hear all of that next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're always live on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I just looked up in the bullpen. I don't know who's getting ready, Clary or Toby, but they're out there throwing.
What are they throwing? Football? Baseball?
No, it's definitely baseball style. Clary's got a nice little throw motion.
Uh-oh. I was actually talking to Claire and them earlier today about the about basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Claire said he's a shooter, and I said, you know who else is a shooter? Mr. Craig Hoffman. And then Toby was like,
known.
yeah. And then Toby was like, yeah, we need to get a Team 980 1067 The Fan basketball game. I'm just like, it's not enough young people.
Why does I mean, like, that's more of a game that I'm interested in. It's like a Toby, Clary, me, you. You get some of these other dudes. You know, we had the fun discussion yesterday, and we'll get back to the Jaden Daniels thing in 30 seconds. But we had the fun discussion yesterday, and exactly what I said was going to happen. All these NFL dudes took super offense to the fact that Austin Rivers said an objectively truth, which is that more NBA players. I don't know whether 30 dudes in the NBA could go play in the NFL, but like it's not that deep. How many dudes are in the NFL are taller than 6'3" and weigh less than 240 pounds? Because most of the dudes that are taller than 6'3" are O or D linemen. And most of the dudes that are less than 240 pounds are like 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah.
So you ain't playing in the NBA. You don't meet the size requirements, fellas. And yeah, I heard like B. Mitch today being like, get in an Oklahoma drill with me at 54 years old. Yeah, Brian Mitchell would kill Austin Rivers.
Yeah.
But guess what? Austin Rivers could probably run a route on a bunch of NFL corners, one-on-one. That's a wide receiver. Austin Rivers is pretty skinny. I don't know if Austin Rivers is one of.
But some of those
30.
people just got crazy. Like Kyrie, I wouldn't want to guard or check Kyrie just because his footwork is crazy. He knows how to get in and out of cuts. Like, that is a skill.
Yeah, they do it with a ball, shaking dudes whose job it is to stay in front of them. And now you don't have to have a ball.
Yeah.
Just like playing tag with an NBA player would be hell.
Yeah.
Because, and I realize football is not tag, but like they have 18-foot arms to tag you, and they just shake dudes for a living. Toby's now thrown 2 past Clary if you've heard slight thuds in the background. And Clary just gave me the look that you give your parents when you know you're in trouble.
Oh, man.
Like you broke something.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times. More from Jaden Daniels on Keyshawn Johnson's podcast today. By the way, it's because Toby's trying to throw curveballs out there. Can see the grip. I can see the turnover. But they talked about the Topgolf visit, and despite what it seemed at the time that Jaden was a little upset and his agent maybe was upset, turns out Jaden Daniels was not very upset.
I was cooling because I just left the Giants and flew to Washington.
Okay,
and I mean I knew all those guys there, so it was like it was it. Like I ain't really tripping. This ain't it just felt like a big recruiting visit, was what it kind of was. Like they was just telling me like, yeah, I don't really want like the visit to be all uptight about football. Like they want to, let us have fun, because we've been going through this for so long. And that's something that they took from the Niners and stuff like that and other teams. It was just different because it was 4 of the top 5 quarterbacks there, which, kind of blew up on social media. So that's the only thing that was different.
But you had already knew him from whatever college football, 7-on-7 tournaments.
Yeah, I've been knowing them. I mean, I trained with Mike and JJ.
Okay.
All pre-draft. I met Drake last summer, so like we was all cool.
Yeah,
we chilling.
Yeah, people was going crazy, right? Some people was going real crazy.
Yeah, they were. It was nuts. What a funny thing that is going to be to look back on. And years from now when it still doesn't matter.
Or his agent is getting riled up and fans are getting riled
up. What are you
up.
doing on Twitter, man?
You should never have done that. Like, come on, man.
It clearly affected nothing. Jaden was the leader. He came out the leader. It was a chance for them to learn. And by the way, it also, maybe it matters because other guys who were there, even at other positions, that's the thing. It wasn't just the 4 quarterbacks. There was a lot of other dudes there that might want to sign here later in free agency for their second contract because they like Washington, because they have good vibes about the Commanders. Cliff Kingsbury, obviously going to be a huge factor in Jaden Daniels' career, starting immediately. Here is Jaden on his new offensive coordinator.
Cliff is open-minded.
Yeah.
Like, he ain't the OC that's like, man, it's my way. Like, we got to do X, Y, Z. Just having conversation with him was like, man, what do you like? How can we help the team be better? And I'm like, we bouncing ideas back and forth off each other. But I like his scheme, honestly. I think it suits me. And obviously, you got to evolve with the times. You got to be able to have balance, keep a defense honest now, especially with all those athletes out there.
So I was listening, again, these cuts courtesy of All Facts, No Breaks, Keyshawn's podcast with Fox Sports. And I was listening to Mina Kimes' podcast earlier, and she had a guy who I really like, Derek Classenberry, QB Class on Twitter, from Bleacher Report on. And it was interesting hearing them talk about the Commanders, because Mina's pod this week was about quarterback fit. And they talked about how much they love it for Caleb because he's got all the great weapons, and he's the most scheme-proof of these guys, so they can build something around him, but really no matter what they do, they'll probably be right because he's that good. But with Jaden, the biggest concern they had outside of the schematic stuff, where they were kind of wondering what Cliff is going to do, is the offensive line. And they just trashed the Commanders' offensive line. And I thought they just went too far. They said they think it's one of the bottom 5 offensive lines in the league, which is not to say that they didn't perform that way last year. But I think when you say that, you have to acknowledge that, like, line performance is not equivalent to line talent. And also they upgraded the talent. So one, the biggest factor in the offensive line playing poor or producing poorly last year, right? So when I say producing poorly, I mean, you look at the rankings of pressure ratios and those kinds of things, the things that are quantifiable on paper, and they're really bad for the Commanders last year. I would not ever try to tell you that the Commanders' offensive line played amazingly last year. What I would tell you is their circumstances were crap. That Eric Bieniemy screwed them as a play caller. That he set them up to fail because they and the quarterback, who was a young quarterback who had a problem holding the ball, especially earlier in the year, were so leveraged because of the play calling that they didn't really stand a chance. That running the football, they actually were decent. I guess some of the metrics don't favor them, but again, they were top 10 in the league in yards per attempt rushing for most of the year. They just had so few attempts that it didn't really matter. But ultimately, when you have so much drop back, very little play action, your play action's not very, very well married to your run game. You don't have the threat of a run game. You are constantly in bad situations. You don't move the pocket. When I say bad situations, down and distance. You don't move the pocket. You don't throw enough short game or call enough short game. You don't have a screen game that's effective at the level that you should in the NFL, and especially in an offense built like that one, where Andy Reid, the same offense, uses the screen game with Patrick Mahomes at a higher rate than Eric Bieniemy used it with Sam Howell. All that stuff matters when you talk about offensive line performance. And so I'm just not as concerned about the line as a lot of experts who I think are really smart football people are, when I imagine that a lot of that is data-driven. And I would tell you, if you watch the tape, you'll get a little bit different story about the data. That the data requires circumstance. And if you didn't watch Commanders tape last year as a national pundit, I understand. Because if you're trying to watch teams that you have to care about, the Commanders weren't on that list past middle of the season, past the Chicago game in October. So I don't blame Mina or Class or anybody else that is concerned about the Commanders' offensive line. And by the way, to be clear, I am also concerned, but I don't think they're one of the 5 worst units in the league from a talent perspective. And I do think, back to bring this around to what Jaden said about Cliff, I do think that Cliff is adaptable and will build around what he's got. And the other part of this, where this marries together, listening to what Mina and Derek had to say, and kind of this idea of what the offense that Cliff will build will be, is a comparison for Jaden that I actually hadn't thought enough about, that I really like, Ant, is Jalen Hurts. When we think about Jalen, we know his running matters, right? They run him, and his running matters a ton in very specific situations. He's so good as a short yardage back, and you can run quarterback power and things like that because he's so strong. He's thickly built, all that kind of stuff. So he's a different kind of runner than Jaden, but I would say they're more similar than like Jaden and Lamar. Like the home run threat is the most similar between Jaden and Lamar, but like Lamar's ability to be maybe the most elusive player in the league, bar none, positionally, is just different, where Jaden and Jalen are more of straight line guys with some shake and ability to break tackles. Although Jalen might be more likely to run through or over you and Jaden might be more likely to shake you, it's just not on the level of Lamar, right? And I think Jalen's obviously got more speed. But I think stylistically how you use them as runners outside of the short yardage stuff is probably more similar. And how you want to leverage their running ability as players. And by the way, their passing profiles I think are very similar as well. They're both very accurate. They both don't throw a ton over the middle based off what they've done so far. Jaden, who knows, maybe he can do that. But Jalen wasn't that guy in college, and he hasn't been that guy in the NFL. Much more of an outside the numbers type of thrower. And again, for the same reasons that we talked about with Jaden. Jalen's got, with the Eagles, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Of course he throws outside the numbers a lot. Jaden in college had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Of course he threw outside the numbers a lot. But their throw profiles and their running profiles match up in, I would say, better in terms of a comparison than anybody else that I feel like I've heard Jaden compared to. And thus the way I would want to build the offense is very Philly-esque. Heavy run game, lean on your running attack, leverage your quarterback's running ability to help that, and then set up the big throws outside the numbers and or down the field to get a bunch of chunk plays and be successful that way, as opposed to having to methodically, piece together drives and have a bunch of throws through traffic over the middle. And then it becomes really relevant that Brian Johnson's on the staff. Like, if you want to use Philadelphia as a model, who better than one of the main guys who was the architect there? Like, Shane Steichen's not available. He's doing the same thing with Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. But outside of Shane Steichen, like, Brian Johnson's your guy. And I think it's awesome then that Johnson's on the staff and can contribute ideas and execution and all of that to what they're trying to build here.
I'm not going to lie, Craig, you got me excited just thinking about the possibilities. And we
like,
can have a Philly-esque kind of offense with the running backs we have.
Is it the most complicated?
Yeah,
is it the most complicated offense in the league? No. Is it one of the most effective offenses in the league 2 years running?
Yep.
Hell yeah, it is. Who cares? You don't get bonus points. And this is kind of the thing sometimes when we talk about quarterbacks. In college, it's one thing. It's not that you get bonus points, but you have to try to project through the simplicity of an offense. If you have the ability schematically to recreate that in the NFL, there are no bonus points for creativity. Just score the football. And that's, I think, what the Commanders are going to try to build here. And then what the hope is, as defenses then solve some of these simpler concepts or find ways to cope, that you can get away with some simpler stuff because of extreme skill sets, a la Jaden's speed, and that they find solutions for it over time. That buys him the time to become more adept as a passer at the NFL level, which is the transition any rookie has to make. And then, by year 2, year 3, year 4, you're looking at a more NFL-y type of offense where Cliff has been able to grow it with Jaden together. And that's when you're talking about him reaching his ceiling and the Commanders being ultra competitive. When we get back here on the Team 980, which Take Command segment did we pick today? Oh yeah, we did pick the juicy one. So Trevor Sycamore is our guest on Take Command. The full podcast will be out tomorrow, including his thoughts on the Commanders draft class. But the topic that I've been kicking around quite a bit with folks around the league, like friends, media friends and such, is why the difference in what Jaden Daniels' perception was among league people versus Jaden versus Drake in kind of the draft scouting world, the media draft scouting world. And Trevor's a guy that, and along with a lot of his colleagues, we had Sam Monson talk about it earlier in the week as well, or late last week as well. Trevor's a guy that had Drake as QB2. So where's the disconnect? And what does he take out of the fact that throughout this process, Jaden seemed to be the guy the league preferred? Is that something that affects his evaluations going forward? Great conversation. You'll hear it next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Got the chance to catch up with our pal Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus on Take Command. Full episode will drop in your feeds tomorrow morning. But a conversation that I've wanted to have with Trevor and some of my other media friends for a while. We got to have me, Trevor, and Logan on the disconnect between what the league thinks of Jaden Daniels and kind of the media draft community. Why did that happen, and why did so many in that community favor Drake May? What is the NFL value versus what they value, and does that change how you look at things moving forward? Does that evolve your thinking if you see Jaden Daniels ultimately go number 2? Great conversation. Me, Trevor, and Logan, and you get a sneak preview of it right now. Wrapping up here on Take Command, our guest today, of course, Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema. So the Drake May, Jaden Daniels discussion is one that is never going to die, much to, I think, all of our chagrin. But it's the kind of thing that we'll be monitoring for the rest of their careers, obviously. But I think from a draft perspective, it's really interesting to watch Drake may be the not universal, but the favorite amongst whether it's you, Nate Tice, like Mina. There's so many smart NFL that look at this and are like, it's obviously Drake May QB2. And then the more and more reporting that comes out about how the league feels, like our buddy John Kine from ESPN obviously did a lot of reporting on this as the Commanders ultimately draft Daniels. And John's like, everybody I talked to, they said Daniels was QB2. You got people like Louis Riddick, who used to work in the league, saying that actually for Louis, he was QB1. Where do you think the disconnect is in kind of the way you see it and the way so many in the league seem to see it? And why do you think, and Logan, you ended on Daniels as QB2 as well, or right there with McCarthy. We both had them as kind of 2A, 2B almost, if you will. So like, where do we think that this disconnect is? What are the factors that maybe the NFL weighs heavier than you do? And Trevor, I'd be curious as kind of we get through this conversation here, if that affects how you look at quarterback at all moving forward.
Yeah. So look, I think the way that I would describe the difference between kind of how maybe draft Twitter, social media saw May versus Daniels, and the reason why the NFL liked Daniels a lot better is because I think Daniels is more repeatable right now, right? He's much more consistent. I think Daniels had the best fundamentals of any quarterback in this class. I think that people look at him and they go, "Oh, running quarterback, yeah, but he needs to be more consistent, right?" It's like the stereotype, like, "Oh, if they're a rushing quarterback, they're not really, consistent as a pocket passer or anything like that." I think that Daniels is incredibly fast, and obviously we've seen that a lot. But I also think he's got very good fundamentals. I mean, from his footwork all the way through his throwing motion, it is very repeatable. You know what you are getting every time. And I think the NFL absolutely loves that. So they go, okay, well, you already have, now I just need to teach you where to look and when. And I think that to NFL coaches seems to be an easier talking point or selling point of, oh, I can work with this player. Whereas Drake May, if you ask me, better arm talent, more diverse thrower. I mean, he is somebody who can layer throws at every single level, whether you're talking about vertical thirds or whether you're talking about horizontal thirds. I mean, any combination of them. I think Drake May has showcased the ability and the success level to hit all sorts of throws against all sorts of coverages at any point in the field. And I think he could do so with really good velocity, better velocity than Jaden Daniels. But the footwork, the fundamentals sometimes escape May. And I think that makes teams nervous. Like if we have to change how a guy is throwing versus what we've seen in college, well, like how much is that going to stick? Is it going to be consistent? And I think that kind of makes teams a little bit nervous because I think the big detractor from Drake May, especially this past season, was he just misses. Like he just misses some throws. He kind of, he kind of made some decisions that he'd like to have back, but man, I mean, he's still a young gunslinger quarterback. I feel like that part of it was getting a little bit overblown. But the accuracy, just the missed throws, and you just go, man, like missed that. There was no real need to miss that throw. I think really frustrates teams. And where you look at Daniels, there just aren't there. There's not a lot of that. I mean, sure, he could speed up his process as well, but when Daniel sees it well, I mean, it's a beautiful step drop. He is fully balanced. The feet are light. He can move directions very easily. He can put his foot in the ground. And like I said, he can generate a ton of power on that back foot. The feet are married up with the shoulders and exactly where the ball is going. The follow through is beautiful. Like it is all there for Daniels. That part of his game is so repeatable. It is so clean. You don't have to worry about it. So that paired with the rushing ability that he has, although of course, we could talk about the fact that he needs to protect himself a lot better when actually taking off with football. That to me is where I think the NFL is just, they prioritize that part of it more than maybe we do on the outside, because we're not the ones that are necessarily coaching them. We're sitting here saying like, okay, but look at what Drake did in 2022. You've got to believe that you can get something in the middle as a starting point and then make him even better in the NFL. And when you do that, in my opinion, Drake May's arm is significantly feels too strong of a word, but like it's better than Daniels. I think May has higher arm talent than Daniels does. I think Daniels has an adequate arm for the NFL level, and he can hit NFL throws, but it's not quite what Caleb's was. It's not quite what Drake's is. It's not quite what even like McCarthy's is and Penix, right? I mean, I think it's closer to, I think Daniels is closer to Bo Nix than any of those guys that I mentioned before. But you don't really, his fundamentals are so clean that he maximizes his arm basically on every single throw. So it doesn't look like he's really like forcing it or anything like that. It still looks smooth. So those are kind of the things that come to my head when I think of, all right, well, why was the NFL higher on Dan than May? And look, maybe it's also like some interview things, right? I mean, like that's a big part of the process. And I'm not saying like Drake's not a good dude. I've had the opportunity to sit down and interview Drake May. I had a great time getting to know him and chatting with him and all that. So my experience with him was great. Anytime I've seen him on like a podcast or anything like that, or at the combine or whatever, he seemed great. But sometimes that can go into it too. Sometimes it's just a little bit of that competitive edge. Maybe the teams that interviewed Daniels maybe believe in him more, believe in that fire competitiveness, and maybe that's all the edge that you need. And then word starts getting out with the insiders and people is like, oh yeah, Jaden Daniels is the guy. He's gonna make it. He's gonna pan out amongst these other quarterbacks. So maybe that goes into it a little bit too. But in terms of overall arm talent, I lean May pretty easily, and that's why I ended up with him at QB2.
So the thing I wanted to ask you about, to kind of follow up, obviously I agree, like the repeatability of his drop, Jaden Daniels, I think is 100% right. Like just the fundamentals are there. The two things that I kind of noticed or just wanted to call to your attention and get your thoughts on are his improvement over his college career, Jaden Daniels, and then also his eye discipline. His eye discipline to me just seemed to be significantly better than Drake's. And like when I look at quarterbacks in the NFL level, at the NFL level, like they have really good eye discipline. And it's one of the reasons that I ended up really liking JJ. I thought he did a great job of understanding what the defense was presenting and then manipulating it using his body position and his eyes. And again, like the LSU offense was very simple. So in terms of like, you know, what they were getting on a down and down basis, it wasn't like he was doing like brain surgery, but he was always very disciplined with his eyes. And I just want to get your thoughts on that, and if you thought that was part of like why he moved ahead of Drake in the NFL's eyes.
I do, and this is a really good point to bring up because I think that answering those two questions are sort of one and the same. I do love Jaden Daniels' sort of path to get to this point, right? You think about him as a quarterback at Arizona State. He was basically just one read, vertical, deep shot toward, or he's going to take off and run. So his time as a starter at Arizona State, he was really just winning off of being a really good athlete and having a pretty good arm. He really wasn't like taking care of the football super well, going through progressions, anything like that. He transfers over to LSU, and you can really tell. I haven't heard him say this, but this is what I think just because of how much he dedicated himself to this. I think you can tell that he went, all right, I got out of Arizona State. I transferred to the SEC. If I don't take care of the football, I'm not going to last in this league. And if I have to transfer again, like that might be it. Like you can tell how much care and attention he put into becoming a better quarterback, to making decisions, taking care of the football in 2022. And he had one of the lowest turnover-worthy play rates in the tree because of it. Now, the big-time throws were down. The average depth of target was down. He just wasn't taking as many chances. But that turnover, I mean, he did not turn the ball over in 2022. Now 2023 comes around, and you could tell he kind of says to himself, or, you know, him or his offense coordinator, his quarterback coaches, whatever, it's like, okay, you got the tendencies and the eye discipline, which you mentioned, which is a fantastic point. You've got that eye discipline down. You don't have this, over-aggressive mentality to put the ball in harm's way. But let's step it up a little bit. Right? Let's push the ball down the field a little bit more. Let's get a little bit more big time throws. Let's get the average depth of target back up. And this past year, obviously, as a Heisman Trophy winner, you saw it was the best of every single world. Now, the turnover worthy play rate was a little bit higher, naturally, just because of how vertical the offense was. But his big time throws through the roof compared to 2022. The average depth of target, same thing. And the turnover-worthy plays were still relatively low. Now, you talk about like the sacks taken and that kinds of stuff. He's got to get a lot better at not taking as many sacks and being able to get rid of the football a little bit better. But that's something that you can work on. But to your questions, to your point, that journey that he has had, that linear progression of getting better every single year at tangible things. Like you could point out every single step of where he got better. And it was just they say that like progress isn't always linear. And they say that for people, like kind of going through adversity and, saying like, oh, like you get up when you get knocked down. Daniels' college career is pretty much a linear progression, just going up until we saw him this past year win a Heisman Trophy. So I think it's also very easy for NFL evaluators to just see him get better every single year. And I have said this before, and I do believe this. If you flip-flop Drake's 2022 and 2023 season, I think he's QB2. I think he goes second off the board because his 2022 season was better in the eyes of evaluators than 2023 was. And it was just the fact that it's just funny to me that we act like 2022 doesn't really exist or doesn't count just because 2023 was a little bit more recent. It's like, he still did that. Like he still did that a year before. Just the offense was a little bit different this year, and it just wasn't the same year for him and the rest of the team. So I wonder where we're at if Drake May's 2022 and 2023 seasons were flipped, even progression that Daniels had. I kind of feel as though May would have been QB2 at that point, which is, again, what makes this conversation a little bit silly to me. But that's kind of a long answer to your question of Jaden's journey and how it played into how the league saw him, because I think they absolutely loved pointing out different spots where he got better every single year.
Yeah, I think the other thing you said at the end of your first answer too is where I kind of look at this discussion, which is the mental side of it and the leadership and the interviews and all that kind of stuff. And I wonder sometimes if that's smart or if that's too much of like football guys being football guys, where like the data is cold, right? And the data just says like, this is what happened. And you have to be able to put that data in context. Everyone's got the same numbers. How your ability to interpret them is what makes you good at using the analytics, the numbers, whatever you want to call them, or not. But I do think it's interesting that we talk about so much of the intangibles, the leadership, and I look at a guy like Adam Peters who values that stuff. And I look at him drafting based off the leadership, and a guy like Mike Sanders still, it's like, yeah, he's a little undersized. Yeah, this, but like that dude's the best leader in the draft. That's who we want a Washington Commander to be. And I tend to lean towards like, maybe actually that's the correct way to look at it, that there is something about a projection that you have to understand the person and where they're going. The fact that, as Adam said about Jaden, and you just talked about, like, it was hard for him. He had to work for it. I do think that stuff matters. And to me, I know, look, moving forward, like I'm going to be trying to look into guys' stories more and kind of understand where they came from as much as, maybe not as much as, but certainly in conjunction with the tape. That to me is like my big takeaway from this process, and watching Peters go through this for the first time as an analyst up close. But I'm just curious, Trevor, to kind of double click on that part of it with you, of someone who, obviously with the amount of data you guys have at PFF, that's where you're going to start. You have great access to the tape, and that's kind of where you have made your living doing this, as someone who's really good at looking at the tape and deciphering what's there. But how much has that infiltrated your process the longer that you've done this, of kind of the human element, if you will?
Yeah, it's the ultimate cop-out for me as a draft analyst, and why I can survive for many years after this is, I can look at the tape of a guy and say like, oh, I like him. And if he doesn't work out, be like, there's something I just,
how was I supposed to know that?
I didn't know him. So no, but in all seriousness, like it's a massive piece of the pie. I've said this for years. You draft people as much as you do players, right? I mean, like that, you can evaluate all the tape that you want. You can envision them in certain parts of your scheme. But at the end of the day, a player's toughness, competitiveness, work ethic, leadership, like those are genuinely all things that hold the key. Like and when you talk about like, oh, coaches are putting them in a good situation, things, it is simply to make these human beings more confident or believe in themselves, to maximize whatever talent that they have. That is the ultimate wild card of every single, puzzle that you put together when it comes to the picture that you are building of a prospect and how they're going to fit, and the scouting report that you have is the player aspect of it. And it's massive. It's why teams spend so much time at the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl or the Combine or those individual, well, not for the Commanders individual, more of a group thing when it comes to those interviews and visits that you have trying to get to know these guys and what makes them tick. I mean, you hear stories in the past of like, oh, this guy was going to draft this player number 1 overall. Like I don't know if this actually happened or if it was just kind of like urban legend at this point. But like when the Bucks, I remember, had the first overall pick in 2015 and it was Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota, like I heard people say, oh, the Bucs staff like went to the gym of Jameis Winston's high school and asked like, okay, like who was he? Like who was he when he wasn't this big star and ESPN wasn't watching and all this kinds of stuff. And it's like, those are the things where you go to these great lengths simply to see who people are. And it's because you want to see what their confidence level is like within themselves, whether they believe in themselves, that competitiveness, that toughness. I mean, those are words that you just continue to hear every single time that you ask a coach. I cannot tell you how many times this has happened at the combine. You get up there and an offensive coordinator, a head coach, or whoever it is, and you go, what are some qualities that you look for in a defensive lineman, knowing that, okay, they're probably going to draft a defensive lineman at some point in the draft. A lot of them, before they even get into any skill set, will say something like, well, qualities that you look for in an NFL player that we want on our team are, you want him to be a fierce competitor. You want him to be tough. You want him to be somebody with a good work ethic that can push themselves. And at the end of the day, like, that's what matters most. We can sit here and we can talk about bend and explosiveness and arm length and all that kinds of stuff. But if you don't have the drive to be the best that you can be, then sometimes players with less talent actually end up performing better. And I think that's just that's a case of sports in general, and why the people part of scouting these guys is so important.
No doubt. And if people want more insight into the depths that teams go to find out stuff, like your high school janitor story, our friend Jordan Roderick, who writes for The Athletic, did this series where she was basically embedded with some of the Rams scouting department for 10 months. It's called Finding Rams. It's on The Athletic. It is incredible reporting, and some of the stuff that the Rams do throughout their process is pretty fascinating, and I'm sure a lot of other teams do similar stuff. So I would say if your interest is piqued on the janitor story, go check out Jordan's work. Of course, a former guest on the show as well, in The Athletic. Trevor, this was great, dude. Always appreciate you. Thanks so much for the time. And if you have any wacky football bits that you want to do over the summer, just let us know with time between now and training camp.
That sounds good. That's what I do on my podcast as well. So might need a little bit of a crossover, a bleed over, or something like that, just so we can survive until August.
Done. That's half the work for twice the shows. I'd sign us up. Trevor Sikkema, everybody, Pro Football Focus. We'll see you next week on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take. All right, that is Trevor from Take Command. That's the end of the show. If you want to hear the beginning, well, you got to subscribe to Take Command, and it'll be in your podcast feed in the morning. Thoughts on the Commanders draft class and the biggest surprises of the 2024 NFL draft with Pro Football Focus's lead draft analyst, Trevor Sikkema, me, and Logan. Speaking of surprises, and I have been, while we were playing that for everyone, watching the Champions League semifinal.
Yeah, I can see.
When I turned it on, so 15 minutes ago, Bayern Munich was up 1-0. It is now 2-1 Real Madrid.
Oh my!
With somewhere between 3 and probably 7 minutes left, as stoppage time was starting, which a whopping 9 minutes on the clock of extra time. That's when the goal went in that put Real Madrid ahead. That goal was a VAR situation, so it took a long time to get everything situated. So not sure exactly how much time they'll wind up having here, but big time trouble now for Bayern Munich, and it is going to be interesting to see if they can tie this up. But Real Madrid, doing as they do, Madrid Magic, currently up 2-1 in the Champions League semifinal. If they win, or I guess whoever wins, will ultimately face Borussia Dortmund in the final. Coming up next, that's your team, man. That's your team, Dortmund.
It is indeed, man. Actually,
as of yesterday, when you learned if they exist?
Nah, I already knew.
Oh, that's right, because of FIFA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, look, I used to be nice, really nice.
Are you still nice on FIFA?
I can turn back the clock, You want
to come over to the crib and find out?
And we can definitely do that. We can definitely do that, Mr. Hoffman.
All right, that's you and I. We're gonna put that on the calendar.
Ooh.
And it's gonna be like, I'm gonna come get some chicken salad, and I'm gonna make some goals happen in FIFA.
Yes, sir.
It'd be a good time. All right, when we get back. Andrew Marchand of The Athletic. Is inside the NBA about to be a thing of the past? Yeah. Charles Barkley, all them. Is the NBA on TNT going away? Yeah. Did you not know that's what we're talking to Andrew about?
No.
Dog, your face was just complete shock. Yeah.
Dang.
That's what's on the table right now. Why and what does he think is going to happen? Andrew Marchand, media writer for The Athletic, joins us next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And just after 5 o'clock, it is indeed time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Our guest today is a senior writer at The Athletic covering sports media. It's Andrew Marchand. Andrew, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the big story that I want to talk about with you is one that you wrote on today, which is that the NBA is finalizing or working towards finalizing its next media agreement. ESPN's already in, Amazon's already in, and there's one more slot remaining that is down to NBC and TNT. And obviously, if it goes to NBC, it appears that would be the end of Inside the NBA, which is perhaps the greatest studio television show in the history of sports television. What is the state of play as we sit right now? And when are we talking about this being for? Like, would all of a sudden the end of the playoffs this year be the end of Inside if it goes NBC's way? Or are we talking about something that takes place years down the line?
So a couple of things. Number one, these new deals would go into effect not next season, but the following year. So you'd still have one more year if TNT were to lose it inside the NBA. The way it stands now, the incumbents are ESPN and TNT. ESPN already has a framework agreement, which will keep it as the host of the NBA Finals on ABC and ESPN, and then their streaming platforms for another 11 years, and also have the conference finals. And then Amazon is going to get a package, and they'll have a conference final every other year. And then the last one is Turner versus NBC, and they're still negotiating, and the NBA is still figuring out what they're going to do. Turner does have some matching rights, which complicates the situation a little bit more if the NBA decides it wants to go with NBC. And so that's where everything is at the moment.
So when you say there's matching rights, does that mean Turner has a right of refusal, that as long as they're willing to pay the same as NBC, that it is a done deal that it will stay with Turner? Or is it a situation where there's enough change in the media landscape that perhaps NBC can offer something that Turner can't match, whether that's Peacock, whether that's broadcast television, whatever facet of that deal that the NBA considers unmatchable?
Yes to both those questions. So the issue is, it depends how you look at it. I think that Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns TNT Sports, they look at it that's a little bit broader. NBA and NBC, they may look at it where they could put something called a poison pill into the agreement where the Warner Brothers Discovery can't match. Now, what that could be, there's a lot of ways you could do it, but one thing that does seem possible is the idea that NBC has a broadcast network, your local NBC affiliate, so it's all across the nation, while Turner does not. They have a cable outlet and they both have streaming. And so, that's one thing to look at. That if it does come to that where the NBA has an agreement with NBC and then Turner wants to, it will get complicated and messy. And so, we could see that. That's very possible. But, it's not determined as of yet.
When it comes to what the NBA wants here, as we're talking with Andrew Marchand, senior writer at The Athletic, you mentioned some of the great things for NBC. There's obviously tremendous history there. Those of us that grew up watching Michael Jordan dominate everybody on NBC to the tune of Round Ball Rock. Like, there's obviously all of that. Friends of the show and fellow members of the Syracuse Mafia, I'm sorry, Andrew, Mike Tirico and Noah Eagle are ready to go as a 1-2 punch of play-by-play, and they could certainly recruit tremendous analysts to NBC. Obviously, TNT has Inside the NBA, which is as iconic as it comes. So how do you think the NBA would like this to break besides getting the most amount of money they can out of this deal from either party?
Well, one thing that's very interesting, and I wrote a big column today about it, is the head of the head of Warner Brothers Discovery, the chairman, not just sports, overall chairman, David Zaslav, said 2 years at an economic conference that they don't necessarily need the NBA, which caught the attention of the NBA and their executives. And I think that kind of it made it a little bit rocky for TNT. At the end of the day, it's big business. These are billion-dollar deals, and the NBA is going to do what's right and what's best for their business interests. But I do think when you look at the relationships, even though TNT's had the NBA for 4 decades, the people in charge right now don't have those long-term relationships. I mean, there's people at lower levels who definitely do, and who have relationships with the NBA. And if you look at NBC, the chairman of NBC Universal, he used to be at TNT when they first started having basketball, when they actually hired Charles Barkley. Mark Lazarus is his name. And that's a little bit of an advantage, I think, for NBC. So if you ask me right now who the NBA might rather be with, it might be NBC. The company, Comcast, is in better financial shape than Warner Brothers Discovery at the moment. They have broadcast. They both have streamers, Peacock for NBC, Max for Warner Brothers Discovery. I think you can make each of them are trying to find their way, with streaming wars where Netflix is the most dominant player. So how it plays out, I mean, at the end of the day, there is a feeling that NBC has a real shot at this. But we don't know as of yet. And then there's the matching rights that does complicate everything.
Again, Andrew Marchand from The Athletic is our guest, and I would highly recommend reading Andrew's piece if you want more about the personalities involved here. It's really illuminating on some of the politics, if you will, that go into all of this. There's also the logistics, which one of the big questions that I have, Andrew, is NBA TV, if I'm not mistaken, is produced essentially by Turner. I don't know exactly the relationship. You probably do, but it's a lot of the crossover of personalities. You see Charles and you see Shaq, you see some of those guys on NBA TV with regularity. They're out of those Atlanta, Georgia studios. What's the future of NBA TV if the NBA-Turner relationship ceases to exist?
Very good question. Yeah, I mean, obviously it would be in flux. How would that work exactly? I'm not sure as of now, but I do think, for example, the playoff games that NBA TV has now, Amazon's going to have playoff games. They're going to have ESPN, of course, is going to have playoff games, and then either NBC or TNT are going to have playoff games. So does NBA TV, for example, not have postseason anymore? I think that's very likely 2 years from now. And if you look at where these league-owned networks have gone, I think at one point, there's a thought that maybe these would be the big competition for ESPN, and that the NFL network, MLB network, NBA, that they all would kind of, obviously just with one sport that they wouldn't necessarily compete, but when you put the 3 of them together, that they would kind of be ESPN's biggest rivals. And that hasn't and is not going to be the case because they just don't work, especially with cable. Less people having cable, people cutting cable, people never getting cable. So I don't think the future is that bright. However this comes, through at the end, even if Turner keeps it, I don't know if NBA TV's future is that bright, just to where it stands in the cable landscape. Although it does have things to offer, especially when you look at streaming. There are, the idea of having continual content does make some sense. And, I've reported on this before, ESPN has had talks with the NFL, with the NBA about selling a minority stake, equity stake in their network to one of the leagues, and it could be a swap where those networks could be involved. So NFL network could end up on as part of ESPN, or if it's with the NBA TV ends up with ESPN. So I think there are possibilities with that.
Yeah, because that's the thing with NBA TV is it feels like it could just be done so much better. I mean, I know that there's limited footprints because of the nature of the sports, and especially with MLB Network. But MLB Network has a personality. They've got shows that I'm not even a baseball fan. I don't watch MLB Network. But I could tell you that, like, Mad Dog's got that show that he does, and some of the personalities that have gone through there over the years. I know what their set looks like because they break through occasionally on social. NFL Network is a behemoth. Like, I genuinely watch NFL Network on a regular basis, and obviously that is a changing network as well. And it just feels like NBA TV has always kind of just been done in the dark over there. And it just feels like there's got to be more potential there. And especially now, Andrew, with the sport of basketball, professional basketball, being seen year-round with the growing popularity of the W, I just feel like that's an opportunity on some level there. And I think it's for a guy in Adam Silver, especially, who used to run NBA entertainment. Do you feel like there's been missed opportunities there, or is it just, maybe me and my basketball fandom looking at it through a tinted reality?
Well, I think both things can be somewhat true. I think at the end of the day, the league, especially the owners, they want money. And so, the way you could grow these networks is by giving them better games. And, they tried that. And the reason they put on the games is because that's how they can get their cable affiliate fees up. So each month in your cable bill, if you have cable, there's a fee associated with each channel. And so for these leagues, the better the games that they have or the minimum amount of games, it's built into their contract. So they kind of have worked it so they put the minimum amount and not their best inventory, because they rather get those fees and then sell their best games to ESPNs and Fox Sports and Turners and NBCs, et cetera. And so, yeah, I mean, like, it could maybe be better. It's hard to break. We talk about Inside the NBA, and it is a great show. And I'd say probably, in my opinion, the best sports studio show of all time. That said, a lot of its audience is built in off of games, which makes it, much better. It's harder to have a show just out of the blue, like the ESPN morning shows. They get the carryover effect of ESPN having great evening schedule of games almost every night, but they still are kind of the morning programming. So it's hard if you're NBA TV to have like a midday show that people might want to watch that's really compelling. You can do some okay stuff, but to really make it compelling, that's difficult. And ESPN is sort of, they have their own show for the NBA each day. And how many shows do you need? Because obviously from the evening, the night before until the next evening, not that much changes every day. So you can only discuss the same stuff over and over so much.
Telling that to a sports talk radio host who hosts a daily show is a very mean thing to do, Andrew. I must say.
But you can build around. You can go. You can talk nationals. You can talk national sports. You can talk media. If you're just focused on basketball, you're a little bit. It's a little bit of a smaller niche that you can only touch on, and so I think that does make it more difficult. But yes, your job. Just everyone listening, it's very difficult.
It's there's some days that are harder than others. I'll put it that way. And you're definitely helping us out today, Andrew Marchand, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Just the last piece of this, I think, that is really interesting, Andrew, and I've talked about this over the course of what feels like years at this point with your colleague Richard Deitch on the show, of this vicious circle we seem to be in going back towards cable, where everyone was like, cable's the worst, let's split it all up. And then it's like, wait, can we just watch all the things in one place and we'll pay for it, it'll be fine. So the NBA going towards Amazon I find pretty fascinating here. How is Amazon, besides money, or maybe the answer is just money, how has Amazon solidified essentially its place in the NBA's rotation?
Well, money is, of course, they're going to pay about $1.8 billion a year, so that's a big factor. But just as big a factor, I think, for them to get, especially to get a conference final every other year, is they've proven with the NFL that they can bring in a big audience. That when you move to Amazon, that you're not going to lose audience because they're not reaching people, just because so many people have Amazon Prime. Either delivering packages every day or they like their programming. It offers a lot of different things. And so I think that is really why they, can make a play and really be competitive. And if you look at it, if this NBA deal goes to conclusion, they'll have the NFL and they'll have the NBA. I mean, those are major players. You look around the world, they have a lot of major soccer rights. They're going to have the WNBA. They're going to have NASCAR. So they have a pretty good portfolio, but what they've proven is, first off, the delivery that if you look at Thursday Night Football, I'm sure there's a couple people in the audience who've had difficulties maybe getting it, but for the most part, it's worked very well. There hasn't really been an issue every week or even at all, basically, in terms of delivering it. They also, their broadcast, which they outsource a lot of it, the production-wise, to NBC, but whenever you think of Al Michaels now and, Herb Street's been underwhelming on Thursday nights on the NFL stuff, but it's still a credible team. And so they've shown that ability. So I think that's what gives the NBA confidence and allows them to move forward, not just because of the money.
So to bring it full circle then, from a talent perspective on Amazon, I know they're very early in this, but could Inside move to Amazon? Is that a thing? And then have you heard anything else on whether they would pursue, I don't know, if there's no TNT, I would imagine going after Ian Eagle and Kevin Harlan and their roster, or maybe you take a younger guy like an Adam Amin out of Chicago who does the Bulls games, obviously has a national profile with Fox on the NFL side. What do you think, what direction do you think Amazon goes from that perspective?
So the idea of recreating Inside the NBA, is something that I doubt that gets totally. Ernie Johnson's already said he's going to stay at Turner. So the idea of just recreating the whole thing, I don't think it's going to happen. Could Barkley, Shaq, and Kenny Smith all end up someplace together? Yeah, I think that's possible. I think you'd bring continuity. I think people would like it. It wouldn't be the most creative thing, but it could be a very smart move by, if it's NBC or Amazon or maybe even both. So I don't think that's impossible. I don't know if you'll see the entire show just because what Ernie said. And Ernie's been a lifetime Turner guy, and he's, in his late 60s. So, does he want to move networks and kind of change everything up when he could do baseball and some other things with Turner? So I don't think, and going on what he said. And then in terms of, the play-by-play, I would think an Ian Eagle would be somebody that Amazon has interest in. I wrote that the other day. If Harlan is available as well, if Turner loses it, I'm sure they have to think about him as well. He's in his mid-60s. Eagle is, I think, in his mid-50s. And then Adam Amin, you mentioned, he's also excellent. It becomes a little bit complicated because all these guys have jobs, right? Adam Amin does Fox on Sundays, does baseball on Saturdays for Fox. So it just gets a little complicated. But I know that Amazon really, first off, it was, in my opinion, very smart how they went about their NFL stuff just to get credibility. If you've watched Apple and how they started out with Friday night doubleheaders and some of the teams they first started out with, they tried to be a little bit, I get it, trying to be creative and different, but it just didn't work. You don't have enough time for me to go through how many levels it didn't work on.
Right.
But Amazon, I think, will try to get that credibility that you're talking about. So I do think that they will go hard after, some of the names we've mentioned.
Andrew Marchand writing about it all in The Athletic. And then, Andrew, remind me and the audience the name of the podcast that you're doing these days as well.
Well, look for a pod. Right now, the podcast I'm in hiatus.
Okay.
Since I started the new job. So
you and Aaron both just left your jobs, and there went a perfectly good sports media podcast.
Yeah, it happens. But I'm working on things, and hopefully by the fall, I'm hopefully going to have something put together, and away we go. And I can be in the audio space every week regularly. So maybe you'll have me back on, and I'll plug it then.
There we go. Excellent. In the meantime, read his work. And again, if you want to kind of understand the politics and the personalities involved in the NBA stuff, definitely read Andrew's column from today. Andrew, this was great. We'll definitely have you back on. Appreciate it. And be well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's Andrew Marchand with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, who hasn't put Lenell Willingham and Andrew Marchand in the same sentence, Anthony? Basically the same guy.
Yeah.
Where we got with Lenell today? He wanted to talk. One, he has a Ted Leonsis hot take. I know that.
Yeah.
And then there was one other thing we were going to do.
You want to do some NBA adjacent stuff, but also
we're going to talk about the NBA playoffs, yeah.
I just seen him tweet that Chauncey Billups would be a strong candidate for the Wizards head coaching job. That's what he tweeted.
I saw that as well. So a plethora of a poo-poo platter of – that's actually kind of funny. especially, never mind. Lenell's next. What more do I need to say? Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. It is 5:30. It is a Wednesday. That means, and you hear the music. You hear DOA. And that means Lenell Willingham is here. Although I will say his camera is a little high. That's my fault. You want to just take that down a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And now we can put Lenell on camera. What's up, dude? How are you doing? I didn't hear you and Russell through the walls today. That might have just been because I wasn't here as long.
It's because you weren't here as long.
Oh,
That's all.
okay.
No, I'm worn from him.
You're worn?
Worn.
Okay.
It wasn't as hostile today, though.
That's good.
People should be able to tell you. They were listening, I hope.
Yeah, they certainly were.
Yeah, it's always interesting with him. I think it's interesting dynamic to go from him to you. It's like polar opposites.
We have different shows, which is what makes the station great. There's a little
It's
something
awesome.
for everybody. And by the way, you both shows could be for you. I mean, Lenell's on both shows.
All three shows could be for you.
Yeah, put that all four, all the junkies.
All four.
Yeah, you put that in a sales deck. Someone. Anyway,
Yeah.
apropos of none of that, you have three things that we want to talk about today. One, we want to talk NBA playoffs.
Yeah, we have
Two,
because you're my other resident basketball guy because you actually watch hoops. You care about hoops.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people do that we work with.
Sure. And then also speaking of hoops in the NBA, we saw your Chauncey Billups tweet.
I'm getting crushed for it. I haven't read any of the tweets, but I know that I see people saying mean things.
And then you fired off a take in the group chat that I want to get to. We'll save that one for next. Well, I'm going to say, you want to go playoffs or do you want to just dive into the Wizards?
It's up.
Chauncey
We can go wherever. I don't know why there's so much disdain towards Chauncey. I'm just now figuring out the details of why he may be parting ways with Portland. Has something to do with his brother not being allowed to be on staff or his brother taking a job somewhere else or something.
I haven't seen any of this.
So it's not for performance. It's not like they're firing him. There's talk of him potentially stepping down. It's not them firing him. So when I bring up Chauncey Billups to folks, they're going, well, if he couldn't stand a rebuild in Portland, why would he want to be here for this rebuild? It's not at all the case of what is going on in Portland.
So, one,
Didn't seem like
if
at least.
a dude is coming with some baggage, that is definitely not.
No, right? Exactly. But if you don't know the relationships, though, this is Chauncey, a guy that's well-traveled in the NBA. You don't know what type of relationship he has with any of the big three, Travis Slank, Will Dawkins, Mike Winger.
Well, so he was Billups' an assistant in L.A., if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So he would have some kind of relationship with Michael Winger.
And that's why I brought it up.
And so look, Chauncey is an interesting guy as a coach. The elephant in the room with Billups that was handled horribly by Portland when he was hired is
the Dame
there is – well, no, not the Dame thing.
Okay.
There is an incident in his past, a sexual assault accusation going back to the late 90s,
I did not know
shortly after he was drafted in Boston, that was not particularly well dealt with at the time. And the way that it was handled, I would say, was not very good when he got to Portland. Like the PR people stepped in, wouldn't let him answer questions about it. And it's like, yeah, man, when you get your first head coaching job, like you're going to have to answer questions about that stuff. And even if there's a way to address that. I'm not saying it has to be a no because ultimately there were no charges filed. It was a long time ago. There's a million things. I've certainly got feelings there. But if at the end of the day, he's like, look, I can't really talk about it. It was a long time ago. I can't talk about it for legal reasons. I respect your questions. I totally understand the concern. I just want everybody in the community to know that I am XYZ, like good person, care, and will not tolerate any bad behavior amongst my player staff or obviously from myself. So it's not something that, there's a way to say that and address it as an adult. And with giving the gravitas to the situation that they did not do in Portland. So that's thing one. With Billups, that's going to come up again if he were to be in the mix here. But even if we put that aside,
I don't think there's any other baggage with him outside of that.
My question would then be what's going on in Portland right now.
So Portland's made a decision not to renew the contracts of Scott Brooks, former Wizards head coach, ironically enough, and then the brother of Chauncey, Rodney Billups.
Right.
And this is the last year of guaranteed money on Chauncey's deal. Yes, last year of guaranteed money. There's a team option next year for him. And people are the reason that they're talking about a potential divorce is like read the room. Why would he want to be a lame duck coach and have the team decide his fate? So the amicable solution is like to just part ways, right?
Sure. And if that's the solution, if that's the case, then like
why would you not be?
I would
Chauncey?
be interested in having a conversation.
That's why people are. That's why my mentions are blown up. I'm like, what the hell are you all talking about?
But has he exactly? I know they're in the middle of a rebuild, but have they exactly crushed it in Portland?
So for those that don't stay up for NBA After Dark, as I like to call it, West Coast hoops.
Yeah.
Blazers tips are
reminders that we live in the worst time zone.
Right. They're normally 10 p.m. tip-offs. Scoot Henderson, it should be the gauge. Him and Shaden Sharp should be the gauge as to how that rebuild is going. DeAndre Ayton played really well for them when he was healthy. Robert Williams didn't play a minute. Season-ending surgery for a surgery he should have had years ago. But Scoot Henderson was really good post-All-Star break and, like, really turned a corner, and you're starting to see why he was highly, touted coming out of the G League Ignite. Like, the kid can play. It just took him a little bit longer than people may have anticipated to get acclimated. And I think with Chauncey being the head coach, being a former point guard, there was this set of expectations for what Scoot was supposed to be. And for my money, I think he was damn good post All-Star break this year. Played good basketball. He's a talented dude. He could play. Make no mistake about it. He's got all of the physical tools and traits to be good in this league. And he showed that.
I just don't know that any of – look, I'm not going to lie to you and pretend like I watched a ton of Portland Trailblazers games this year because I
didn't either.
Did not. I'd have to hit my guy Tom Haberstroh, who did TV for them this year. But the Blazers, like, their pace wasn't very good. Their defense stunk. Like, I know their roster's not any good, but there's not a lot on his resume that I would rather have over a lot of other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And
I didn't say I wanted him to have the job. What exactly did I tweet that has people going off?
This is your thing. When you put stuff in print, I don't think sometimes you realize the solidity with which you say it.
I said would be strong. I said would be strong, and I put strong in all caps candidate for the Wizards opening. He would be a strong candidate. What's wrong with that?
I think strong candidate is too strong. I would say he's worth talking to. Semantics, but I just don't like.
Okay.
He's not in my top 5 candidates probably. I'd have to think about that list out loud now. I mean, obviously, Bud would be top of the list if he's willing to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think he's the best coach on the market.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing where I'd rather kind of take a flyer on a guy like J.J. Redick than I would Chauncey Billups,
who is essentially the same thing as Chauncey.
No.
In terms of
JJ's played more recently. He played and thinks about the game in a much more modern style. Like Chauncey's most famous accolade is the 2004 championship, which is like the biggest anomaly in the history
the ball
of the sports.
up the floor.
Yeah, like it's just a different like what maybe Chauncey is a really
but he was
interesting
in LA,
thinker.
Though.
Yeah, and maybe there is something more to. There's a lot more to him than what he was as a player. But like,
I just think in terms of like what, and now we're perfectly transitioning into the Wizards convo. They need, and this is me and you have had this conversation about Eric Bieniemy here in Washington. They need someone. It seemed like at times last year to put a foot up there behind, and that was Brian Keefe when he took the job. He was more stern, he was more demanding, and for that reason, I thought they looked a hell of a lot better under him. Obviously, they went through that rough patch because they're not talented.
Yeah,
but
they also won like 3 games.
Right, but in terms of the way they were losing,
there was no doubt they were more competitive.
Yeah, and that ultimately comes from just having the respect of the locker room.
Right, but like that's not good enough in year 2.
No,
obviously.
it's not.
And that's the question that Keith's
right.
going to have to answer for. And the good news is for Keith specifically, they have an understanding of whether he's that guy. Right. But I do wonder like who else on the market can be that.
Phil
and
Handy?
Like I see. I don't know enough about Handy and the way he thinks about the game. Obviously, I know LeBron likes him a lot. But
Kyrie.
he's a guy. Yeah, he's managed big personalities, whatever. But like, I also think that there's certain guys that have enough cachet that I do wonder if they're going to be comfortable working in an organization where the front office runs things. Like you have to, that's not to say that the front office has to run things in every organization. Sometimes it probably is better to be a little more coach centric and have Pop obviously being the best example of this in the NBA. But when you talk about the way the personality, but it's really not coach centric, right? It's the organizational alignment.
Right.
And this is what I wonder with a guy like Bud even. we talked about this earlier in the week on the show, is like, with Bud, is he going to come in and be like, nah, I want to do this way? And Winger and Dawkins are like, nah, we do it this way. And is that a good fight that will ends in a best possible outcome, or maybe Winger and Dawkins learn something that they didn't have? I mean, those guys all come from the San Antonio, Oklahoma City tree, so it's not like they're coming from majorly different places, but new ideas. Or is that a bad fight that causes, organizational misalignment, and all of a sudden we're back to having drama and chicanery up and down the Wizards organization?
Done with it. Any update on what Wes Unseld title is?
Guy who was really nice, very well liked, and they didn't want to fire publicly.
Is he in the front office though?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Just
I'll ask around next time. I'm
just
open.
asking. But no, it's fascinating. We have what I call Wizards fan Christmas coming up on Sunday with the draft lottery.
Yes.
I'm excited for that. Either it's Sunday or Monday.
It's Sunday. It's Mother's Day.
Okay, wow.
So, by the way, if you haven't got your Mother's Day gift for your mom, you should do that.
Yes, you should.
But yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what they want. Both stylistically, do they want a vet? Do they want someone who's been around? Do they want like a Kenny Atkinson?
Yeah. Who was also well traveled and got the chops of being a hard ass. I think they need a hard ass.
That's also, you think every team needs a hard ass.
It's just my rule of thumb.
Who's the players, like the players coach personality type that you really like in sports, period?
Are you asking me a specific example of a player's coach that I'm
like
all on board
that is not
for?
a hard ass as a coach that you're like, I like that guy.
Andy Reid.
He's a good
call. A player's coach.
But so Andy's a great example though of like, you don't need to be a hard ass.
Right.
You need to be strict.
Yes.
Like McVay, Reid, Steve Kerr, like these guys are strict with the standard that they ask for. D'Amico.
Yes.
Like D'Amico's not a hard ass in Houston. Like D'Amico seems like a perfectly affable, like really fun dude. But there's a really high standard. And that is what they need. And I think that combination of like the ability to have fun and be personable while also saying like, nope, time to work. These are the rules. Like that's what you need in a great leader. And
love this. Speaking of leaders, I don't know how much draft you and Anthony have discussed here as we get closer. NBA draft.
Not much yet. Where it's probably starting in the next week or two.
So I like to pay attention to the way guys conduct themselves during the summer and on social media.
Of course you do.
Yes, because I care about that stuff, especially in the Wizards locker room where certain guys are being painted a certain way and they're really not that way. Jordan Poole.
Checking out the PSG game yesterday.
Checking out the PSG game. He's out in France with Bilal. And if you don't think that they are working out together and he is trying to rub off on Bilal from a skill standpoint.
Of course he is.
I love that, and that would be my starting point guard next year.
Yeah, no,
Jordan.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, there is an area where Lenell has already decided, just a couple of weeks after this decision was made, that none other than Ted Leonsis has made a massive mistake. We'll reveal Ted's massive mistake next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're live on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. I don't know if you heard, but a lot of people listening on the Odyssey app.
Lots of people. I want to once again, for the second time today, just thank you to our loyal listeners.
Well, you're giving me a round of applause first. I was like, what did I do?
Well, you're part of. Thank you as well for providing good content.
Thank you
for our loyal listeners.
No, we appreciate everyone listening, no matter how you're listening. But we got some data, some information back. The app very popular these days. Appreciate y'all checking us out. And I will say, if you're listening on the radio as well, and you're like, I get to a certain spot on the highway where the signal's a little scratchy, whatever. One, don't forget we're on 106.7 HD2. And if you got Bluetooth in your car, which pretty much everyone does at this point, or you got a way to listen to your car one way or another, you can flip on the Odyssey app and connect us that way. And there we are, loud, clear, digital. And definitely when Lenell and Russell are on, it's very loud. But digital clarity there on the Odyssey app. All right. So we had a group text, as people know, between me, you, and Ant. Famous group text between me, you, and Ant. And we are putting together ideas for the show and for when you were coming on today. And do I want to read this verbatim?
Please do. Please do, because I meant it, and I was. On the night that the decision was made, I wasn't as upset with it. I was more understanding. But then after a couple of preseason games, I love that you're already
saying the hilarious part out loud.
Yes.
Lenell Willingham at 2:52 today. Angel Reese should be a mystic and Ted dropped the ball.
That's the take. That should be the caption of the video.
That's sometimes how we operate around here.
You know?
We're not afraid to get the clicks, if you will. We just would like people to actually watch the video once they click, which is a whole different conversation, and that will be discussed tomorrow during Never Read the Comments. Why are you ready after 2 preseason games of Angel Reese, 0 regular season action, to proclaim not that Mike Tebow made a mistake as the general manager, but that Ted Leonsis made a mistake?
Because Ted Leonsis was very vocal after he tried to shaft the DM or DC by pretending to move to Virginia. When he sat down with it was MSNBC, he did an interview. He talked about wanting to be at the forefront of the evolution of women's sports and the explosion of women's sports. And he talked about what he did for the Mystics, building ESA and wanting them to play at Cap One Arena and being able to host larger crowds. And he is hell bent on it's not just an explosion of women's basketball. It's an explosion of women's sports, but it's starting with women's basketball. And I want to be ahead of this thing. So why not draft the young woman that has all the fanfare, all the stardom, all of the skill, and she happens to be from here? Why not invite that into your organization? One, she's a really damn good basketball player, and I know what the conversation is her fit next to Shakira Austin and having 2 bigs that can't really stretch the floor in today's WNBA, where that's really what you need to succeed. Mechanically, if you look at Angel Reese shoot the basketball, she is a set shooter, flat-footed set shooter, and is lefty and has got a decent-looking stroke. It's not like she's shooting it granny style. Her jump shot is fixable. She made jump shots at LSU. And it's something that clearly she knows as a draft prospect. It's probably what she worked on all pre-draft process. And I know their timeline's kind of crazy.
All 2 weeks of it.
All 2 weeks of it.
But we did see her with Chris Brickley in the gym shooting NBA threes.
So she's got that, and it's something that she knows she could work on. I think, and I don't know how close the evaluation was between the two.
I don't think it was particularly close.
And that's ultimately, I guess, how they reached to their decision. But if it was not a sizable gap between her and Edwards, I would have taken Angel because she's a moldable piece of clay. That's how I look at her. She can end up gaining. She can end up gaining the skill to be a play initiator in the NBA.
I'm not here to talk about Angel Reese versus Aaliyah Edwards, the basketball player. I'm here to talk about how genuinely hilarious it is that you, Mr. Just Strong Take, would endorse, after years of being a tortured Commanders fan, an owner going into a draft room and overruling the sporting staff based off of marketing.
Yes. Well, and it's not just based off of marketing. A lot of it has to do with, I think, Angels, maybe I'm just biased.
If you want to say Mike Tebow made a mistake because you think Angel Reese is a better basketball player.
Mike T should be on the bench.
Well, he doesn't want to be on the bench anymore.
Well, he didn't make a good decision in the draft.
Well,
Love you, Mike T.
Mike was also the GM the whole time he was on the bench. So
Yes.
if you're
There's that. Okay.
So he's been doing
Revisionist history.
Mike,
I have.
Mike T is one of the greatest evaluators and coaches in the history of the sport. So if you want to pick a bone with Mike T, that's fine. The reason
Ted's an easy
the reason that what you said is ridiculous, and I say this just so everyone is clear, with a smile on my face in Lenell's direction. The reason of what you said is ridiculous is because if you want to be at the forefront of women's sports, the way to do it is to treat it like a sport because it's a sport. And you don't do sports by what sells tickets and what sells jerseys.
Well, some people do.
Yeah, and those people are losers. Like, I mean that in a literal sense, not in
right.
a person. I'm not like, loser,
No,
like I'm in
literally,
5th grade.
win-loss record,
I mean,
loser.
they are win-loss record. There's scoreboards, and they are the losers.
Yeah.
And that is exactly how you actually screw up the business side of sports as well, because there is a business side of this. But you want to know what's the best sustainable plan for making money? Winning. Which
this
and by the
organization
way,
has had no problem doing.
As someone who 2 years ago went to damn near every home game, I didn't get to as many last year, but I went to damn near every home game 2 years ago because one of my best friends happened to be playing for the team. There wasn't an attendance problem. Like, they do a good job at ESA. And
one of the
games,
best.
The games are fun as hell. Like, they do a great job with the game production. They do all that stuff. But if you're going to treat it like a carnival act, if you're going to treat it like something that's purely meant for entertainment,
I don't think that's the case. I think that's
out of it.
I think that's underscoring what Angel Reese is as a basketball player.
Right, and that's why like if you want to then have a conversation about Aaliyah, who has not been world on fire through 2 preseason games for sure, but again, they're preseason games versus Angel, who's had 2 pretty solid preseason games.
Emphasis on solid.
Like, that's a Mike Tebow conversation. That is not what you said.
I misdirected.
What you said was Ted Leonsis, and I hate talking about an owner making a draft decision on principle.
And I hear you, right?
And the funny thing is, deep down inside, you agree with me.
I know. Oh, I 100% do. Let's just say that I am I'm a little restless, so maybe when I sent that out, I didn't. Wrong T. Maybe it was the wrong. Maybe I typed the wrong T. That damn autocorrect, Apple.
Oh yeah, blame it on autocorrect.
But no, like I think the conversation that I more want to get into. Wow, it's Michael Penix's 24th birthday. And by the way, I haven't come on here and have I received my proper flowers from the Hoffman show for my proper projection?
No, we can do that another time.
Okay.
Let's stay focused on one topic at a time.
But I think from a basketball standpoint, they damn sure could have made it work with Angel, and I think the other benefits that come along with it would have made it worth it.
If it comes down to like we genuinely have equal grades on this player, then I got no problem with it. But they don't.
They don't.
I think
I understand
not only the Mystics, I think every team in the league had a higher grade on Aaliyah Edwards. There's a lot of people that thought Aaliyah should have
gone. So is Chicago just crazy then?
No, they picked Angel after Aaliyah was off the board.
So you think if Aaliyah was there, they would have taken if Aaliyah and Angel were there, they would have taken
Aaliyah. They would have taken Aaliyah. And I think it's like Aaliyah's a great player.
I'm not taking anything away from her at all. And she's for her personality, she's a damn big personality too.
Right, and she's got a brand and she's got all this stuff. Like she's not getting invited to the Met Gala. Like let's not pretend like
different.
Aaliyah's popularity on TikTok because she does like funny bits on there is the same as Angel Reese going to the Met Gala. Like Angel Reese is a star.
Yes,
and there is definitive value to that, which is why I've been kind of smiling, laughing, winking, throughout this entire thing.
You get it.
Because I get the argument, and I'm not stupid. Angel's a star, and she seems to be a great teammate, and like there's a lot to like. I also happen to really like Angel as a basketball player, as a rebounder, a thing that typically translates from college to the pros.
Yes.
Like there seems to be something there. However, Aaliyah is also good in that department. She is more adaptable. And I think her game is a better fit with Shakira, who, of the 3, is the best player, to be clear.
It's the face of your franchise.
And like, again, of the 3 players, the best player, the one that I would take above the other 2 is Shakira Austin.
Yes.
And so if you're going to build around Shakira and how their games fit together, they occupy the same spaces on the floor. That's the problem with Shakira and Angel. And not to mention, I think Aaliyah, over the long run, is projected to just be better by most WNBA scouts. But that to me is like the ultimate thing here. It's like it's hard. I can't say you made a mistake through 2 preseason games. There hasn't been a real minute of action played yet, and won't be for another week. So to be that declarative is what I found so genuinely hilarious about the text. But like, is Chicago going to reap some short-term benefits from drafting Angel Reese? Yeah, but she was also the best player on the board when they drafted. The Mystics drafted before them, and I have no problem with them taking Aaliyah Edwards and think ultimately it was probably the right pick.
A lot of people
And by the way, if Shakira and Aaliyah partner well and they can add someone else next year, I mean, Jesus, if they get Paige next year, then that would be incredible. But, you know, whoever they add next year, and all of a sudden in 3 years they have a championship team, like, then we're having a different conversation.
We will understand.
And they're gonna be at Cap One selling 10,000 to 15,000 tickets a night anyway.
Yeah. I thought I wanted her here. That's what
I get
comes
it.
down to.
I get it.
And I was watching the draft, and I'll never forget my reaction when Chicago took Angel. I was like, huh? I didn't think Chicago made sense to
She's
take
the best
her.
player on the board. She's the best player on the board. And that it
and now it's
comes
working
down
out
as simple
for
as
him
that.
because Cardos is out. So
Yeah, and you know, we'll see. I mean, I think the real question for most, like, if you want to go really like inside the basketball, is did Dallas make the right pick at 5, not taking Aaliyah, and instead and pairing her, you know, as a 1-2 combination of versatility and skill and everything with Satu Sabali versus taking the point guard in J.C. Sheldon, who I think would have been a great fit here in D.C. So either
now that
way,
we all of a sudden have a void of that position because my favorite Mystic is no longer a Mystic.
Chrissy Tolliver or Tasha. Yeah.
Good person.
Yeah,
she's
great
like just
person.
an all-around good person.
Great person.
Yeah. Sad that Mike T couldn't make that work or whatever. I don't know. I wish I
She's a
knew the
free
ins and
agent.
outs of that situation.
She decided to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Sometimes they be that way.
It bees that way sometimes.
It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are going to talk some NBA in this final hour of the show. Lenell, you have updates overnight on the network tonight, and then you're back with Russell for Throwdown Thursday tomorrow?
Yes.
Alrighty then. Well, that's when you can hear Lenell. One more hour of us next on the Team 980. Final hour of the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Tonight, Knicks Pacers game 2. Later in the week, you got Nuggets, you got T-Wolves in Minnesota for game 3, and it will include, Anthony, I think to both of our surprises, Jamal Murray. Murray, of course, in game 2. Threw first a towel, then a heating pad in the direction of referee Mark Davis. The towel didn't get to Davis. The heating pad got to Davis and passed him onto the floor during play at the feet of a bunch of players who, thank God, none of them slipped on it. Murray also argued some calls during the game, did not speak to reporters after. He was fined $100,000 for the litany of incidents, mainly the heating pad one. And not suspended, Anthony. Level 1 to 10, how surprised are you that Jamal Murray was not suspended? Because I'm at like an 8.9.
I think I'm right there with you, Craig.
Great minds.
Right there
that or
with
we've
you.
worked together too long.
Might be both.
Both
can be true.
That is true.
But I just feel like, again, like for all the reasons like we've pointed out, him putting players' health in jeopardy. Also, just it is a very kid-like action to just be throwing something out there, and then from the NBA side of things, like you also have to set the precedent. So the fact that you're only smacking this guy with $100 fine,
$100,000, slightly different, but also Jamal Murray makes a lot of money.
He makes. I was actually looking up his contract right now. He makes, I don't know. Right now he's on a $14 million deal, which is bit of a bargain, but I think
that is a bit of a bargain.
Yeah, it's
I'm
crazy,
actually surprised.
Right? Yeah.
Jamal Murray, is this his final year? 24, 25?
No. He's in the final year of a 5-year, $158.2 million. Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah.
To him.
Okay. Yeah. He's cumulative cash. Where he's made $122 million so far by the end of this season on this contract.
Yeah.
So $100,000 to him might actually be like a $100 fine to me. And it might actually $100 that might hurt us more than $100K hurts Jamal.
Yeah, no question. But I think the fact that, and it's crazy to think like that because me, the selfish NBA fan, like I want to see Jamal Murray play.
Right.
But at the same token, I don't know if this was the right call. And I think they ultimately ended up not suspending him just because it's playoffs. If this was the regular season, I think he would.
It's like 3 games.
Yeah, he would have got some games.
5 games. Like, I just, here would be my question. Outside of a fight, outside of where you hit someone, what more do you have to do to get suspended than throw something at a referee, miss, and have it land on the playing floor?
Yeah.
Like, if I told you that, hey, in a game pretend you didn't watch Mavs Thunder last night. If I was like, and this didn't happen 3 days ago, and I was like, yo, did you see what happened to Lou Dort last night? And you were like, no, I didn't watch that game. It was late or I was doing whatever. Yeah, Lou Dort threw something at a referee and he missed, and then it was on the floor. Like, he threw a heating pad on the floor. You'd be like, that dude's getting suspended.
Yeah, no question.
Because of course he should get suspended. Like, and I don't say this as like, oh, I'm so mad Jamal Murray's not getting suspended. I want to see Jamal Murray suspended. As a basketball fan, I want to see Jamal Murray play, and I want to see if the Nuggets can pull their heads out of their butts and hope out of wherever else that went and see if they can win this series. But there's just no feasible way on planet Earth that you can throw something at a referee and walk away with a $100,000 fine. There's no way you can throw something at a referee, miss a referee, and have it land on the floor, putting all of your teammates and every other opponent that is on the floor currently in danger, and walk away with a $100,000 fine. That's insane.
I mean, I don't want to speak this into existence or, hope that this happens. But if something like this happens again, I'm going to be so surprised because I don't think that next person is just going to get a $100,000 fine.
Right.
It's going to be something else that happens. And I think Adam Silver's in general, he probably just, got to be a little bit more tougher on the guys because we know the kind of guy David Stern was. He was suspending guys left and right, half seasons, 25 games, 50 games. Like that is the type of, commissioner David Stern was. I don't really know what he did in the 80s and the 90s because I wasn't following. But just the 2000s itself, like
he wasn't alive for most of that, boys and girls.
Yeah.
In the 80s, I wasn't either.
All right.
That was fun. By the way,
we're millennials, Craig.
We are.
We're the same generation.
We are. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I guess though, if you're Silver, you can be like, yeah, he got the fine. We said that was bad, and you did it too. Like, no, you're the second one. You get suspended. Obviously, if it was Murray again, he would definitely get suspended.
Yeah.
But like, my question would be, let's say someone, and I'm not even saying like, what if Anthony Edwards slipped? What if anyone on the Wolves slipped, fell, busted an ankle, broke their wrist trying to break their fall, got a concussion hitting their head on someone's knee falling down, cartoon banana peel type of slip off that heating pad, and there's some kind of injury. Like, is Jamal Murray getting suspended then?
Yeah, no question.
And if he is, then why is he suspended now? Like, you're just suspending the result. You're talking about the results. And I guess, like, if someone throws a punch, whether it connects or not matters. So in that way, sure. But I think that this is definitely suspendable.
People get suspended for bumping a slight bump.
Right. Like, what if he hit? Forget
bump.
the stuff on the floor and the injuries. What if he actually hit Mark Davis with the pad? Are we not suspending Jamal Murray because his aim wasn't very good? And there's a million jokes, and I think Chuck made one afterwards. It was 1 for 11. I'm not surprised that he missed. Like, are we essentially not suspending Jamal Murray because he had a bad shooting night?
I don't know. It's crazy. It is. And then you also ask, why didn't he speak to the media afterwards? I think it's good that he didn't speak to the media.
The only time it's okay to not speak to the media as an athlete is if you come back the next day and you go, I'm really sorry. I just was not in a good place, but I'm happy to answer any question today. And if you get to do that like once or twice a season, and you have to, on the way out, be like, I'm really sorry. I can't talk right now, but I will talk to you guys tomorrow. I promise. Like, if you're at least a human and respect the job that the press has to do.
Yeah.
Because the press is ultimately a part of the apparatus that makes you get to make $122 million and makes it so that your $100,000 fine is not that bad. Yeah, you gotta do better. And like, that doesn't, again, like I said this the other day, and I hate to, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but I think the longer I've done this, the more I've sometimes went like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I hope Jamal Murray doesn't have anything else going on. I hope he just had a bad day at work and was pissy about it.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lot. Because he didn't talk to the media after game 1 either.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like, that's not Jamal Murray. It's not very Canadian of him.
Yeah.
Definitely not very Canadian of him. By the way, back to the age thing real quick. Did you see the shirt that Stephanie Dolson wore into the Mystics game earlier today?
I did not see it.
It's a 90s baby. And the reason I bring it up is because I realize at some point a shirt that's like, I'm a 90s baby, went from you're so young to like, you're kind of old.
Yeah.
Like, now if you're a 90s baby in the W or in the NBA or in the NFL, like, your teammates are like, what was it like to live in the 90s?
It is actually insane, though, Craig. It is. And I actually just posted something on my Instagram because it was a tweet that said, if you're 27 right now, the second you turn 28, people are just going to keep telling you how close you are to 30. And I've already been getting that, Craig, and I'm not 28 yet. I'm 27. I'm going to patiently wait these next 2 months out, month and a half now, because the month is moving fast, and enjoy my 27.
No, I think, like, 27 was really fun. Like, look, my 30s haven't been bad at all. My 30s have been great in a million ways. You do not recover as fast. Your knees, your ankles, all that stuff does, like, hurt a little bit more. But there's a lot of other stuff that's great.
Okay.
I just am talking about the fact that, like we're talking about Aaliyah and Angel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aaliyah Edwards. What year do you think Aaliyah Edwards was born?
2001. Oh, no, 2002.
Yeah, 2002.
Yep.
Right? She was born in 2002. It is 2024, which means that Aaliyah Edwards, who will turn 22 in July, was born in 2002.
Wow. These 2000s babies, man.
That's the thing. Like, you got, like, the kids that are going to go to college this year were born in, like, 04, 05.
Yeah, my little brother was 05.
That's crazy.
Yep.
I was like 15 in 2005.
Yep. I was 9.
Yeah. Anyway, getting old sucks. But also it doesn't. And that's the lesson of this. And also, don't throw things at referees. It's expensive, but at least you won't get suspended, at least if you miss. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Talking Pacers-Knicks next, right? Is that the plan?
Did you want to talk yesterday's game first or Pacers-Knicks?
We can do either. We'll talk NBA playoffs next. How about that? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We are going to go through Kevin Sheehan's mock schedule coming up in about 12 minutes at 6:30. Schedule comes out for real a week from today, which means, Anthony, we have to plan the show for tomorrow. Because tomorrow we thought we were just going to have the schedule release all show. And then all of a sudden the NFL leaked out today. Hey, everybody, we know we kind of told you preliminarily it would probably be Thursday, but it's actually going to take a little bit longer. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Yeah, I wasn't happy about that. I wasn't. But we should have known also, Craig, because usually we would have at least gotten 1 or 2 leaks. At least.
Nah, they kind of start morning of.
Really?
I feel like, maybe, no, I guess
day
some
or
leak
two.
out. Because, like, my guess is that, like, all these teams do these incredible videos. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of that, because we know who they're playing. And so it would just be a matter of, like, hey, if you're like the Chargers and you do the anime thing every year, like you make your anime vignette, you do like, hey, this is what it is for the Broncos, and then you just have to put it in the right order. So you can be like Broncos 1, Broncos 2, Chiefs 1, Chiefs 2, Raiders 1, Raiders 2, and then whoever else the Chargers are playing, and then you just put them in order, add the text. Like, it ain't that hard. But clearly, like, marketing people, like the people who are making the graphics to put them all out, like, teams have it that morning at the very least, if not the day before, and I'm assuming that's when things start to leak out.
Yeah,
TV executives have to find out. So I'm guessing that's how, like, the more people know, which you have to let people know before it's officially released so that they can release it, the more people that know, the more leaks that you are going to get. That is the nature.
So now we got to wait.
That is the nature of things.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not telling you. The leak's telling you.
Just making sure.
I didn't make the rules.
Yep.
At least we know what we're doing next Wednesday.
Yep.
What are we doing the rest of the week? What are we doing tomorrow?
It's a great question, Greg.
If the Nats win tonight, we might have to talk about the Nats.
Uh-oh. They sweep the Orioles?
I mean, they also be a couple games over 500.
Oh, yeah. They
We
are.
have to add the Nats to our summer radar.
Yes, sir.
I'm just saying. Look at them Nationals playing some good baseball. Knicks Pacers is tonight. NBA playoffs will continue to be one of our main topics, of course, here on the Team 980. And look, Celtics big winners last night. They look like the 1 seed and like they're gonna roll. Thunder big winner last night. I don't know if they're gonna roll like they did last night, but they're giving up on average 90 points per game in the playoffs, which is crazy. Best total in years and through the first 5 games. But Knicks Pacers, we talked about this game the other day. The Knicks just cannot play a regular basketball game in the postseason and survive game 1. And my big question kind of coming into this game would be, can Jalen Brunson continually keep up this level of output? Because that's kind of been our thing with the Knicks. And is when we talked about him, it's like, do they need a second scorer, to match Halliburton, Siakam? Do they need it to match, obviously what they're going to have coming in Boston? And if Jalen's going to put up 40 a night, the answer is not necessarily. I just think it's totally unsustainable. So what can Indiana do to try to slow him down, or do they just get lucky and the luck runs out? And then obviously we can talk about what Halliburton needs to do offensively on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I still think he needs a running mate. I don't know if you can depend on Josh Hart to go out and get 24, DiVincenzo to get 25 every night. Like, the role player stepped up in game 1. Shout out to those guys. But how often and how consistent can they do that? And I think you look back at the Mavericks Thunder game yesterday. Luka struggled yesterday. Granted, the knee might be killing him. He doesn't seem to be, playing at his best. But Kyrie was out there. He was cooking. But guess what? The role players weren't there to help Kyrie and Luka when Luka can get going. But so that's my biggest concern for the Knicks, to be honest. Like, if the role players are going to consistently, put up the numbers that they've been putting up, I think the Knicks have a legitimate shot. But I can't depend on those guys to go out there and score 120 points every night and keep up with the Pacers.
No, and the other big thing is they're able to get a lot of second chance points.
Yep,
because they have some. Hartenstein is great at that, and Mitchell Robinson was great offensive rebounding. And whether it's them putting the ball back in the hoop or dishing it out and creating a full second possession or a quick 3, whatever it is, there's so many of those plays for New York. Well, in that game the other night, Mitchell Robinson, it looked like he just rolled his ankle. Turns out I think it's broken, or it's much more severely sprained than initially thought. And he's out 6 to 8 weeks, a.k.a. his season is over. So you just lost some depth. And Tibbs, this is the other thing that I wonder about in terms of the longevity of the Knicks in the playoffs. I don't mean to come off like we're just doubting the Knicks. They're awesome. They're having a great year. They seem to be a very worthy 2 seed. I think there's a really strong chance it's who I would pick to go into the conference finals, where I think they will get beaten by Boston, who's a better team and has proven that over the course of the season. But the deeper you go, like Josh Hart played 48 minutes in game 1. That feels wholly unsustainable at playoff intensities, and this is where Indiana's pace comes into it. The longer the series goes, the more it favors Indiana. Because if you're going to play dudes 44 to 48 minutes a night like Tibbs does in the playoffs, I know they're in great shape, but, like, that's a lot of running, bro.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, a lot of running doesn't feel very good, he says after running a half marathon. I know I'm not in NBA shape, but that's another thing in that NFL NBA debate, by the way. There definitely ain't 30 guys who could last 6 minutes of NBA pace in the NFL. Now, could they train for it? Yeah. But that's a different kind. NFL dudes, you ask them to work for longer than 10 seconds, they're exhausted. Yeah. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyway, I do think that the pace of Indiana, the variety of bodies, their depth can wear down the Knicks in a series. The question I think is really interesting, and it would go, this is why it's huge for the Knicks to get up 2-0 and sweep this tonight, is can the Knicks end the series before that's a factor? And so if they can go up 2-0, split in Indiana, come back to the Garden and win in Game 5, like, I think it's totally feasible for them. Things starts to get to 6, they force a 7. Like, how much basketball will Brunson and DiVincenzo and Hart and Anunoby have played at that pace? And the longer the series goes, I would have to think the more likely it is that Tyrese Halliburton finds a shot. The dude's not scoring 6 points. He's too good. He should be able to get 8 to 10 points a game off layups on fast breaks.
Yeah,
the way he runs.
He just got to be more aggressive, though. Like, literally, since the All-Star break, he just hasn't been aggressive at all. And, like, it's showing because 6 points is
not good enough.
Unacceptable. And then you also turning the ball over. It just,
yeah.
I don't know. He didn't have his best game, so I'm not expecting him to bounce back.
The Knicks deserve a ton of credit. They are as good as anybody in the league at making opponents uncomfortable. They play so freaking hard. The question is, are they just built that way? And maybe they are. Like, maybe Josh Hart and his Mike and Ikes and his caffeine are built to just be able to, it's actually a human Energizer Bunny. That dude just is going to go 48 minutes a night. He's built for it. He's got the candy and he's ready to go. And if that's the case, then, like, Knicks are going to win the series. But is there a breaking point with that? That, to me, is, like, the key question of the series. And then obviously against Boston, if that is ultimately the matchup, I think it becomes a different question about talent. But I think for Indiana, they're reliant on depth and they're reliant on pace. And for New York, they're reliant on, like, physical force and kind of putting the Pacers out of their, like, putting them in misery and then taking them out of it as fast as they can. When we get back, Kevin Sheehan did his mock schedule today. We'll take a look at what Sheehan thinks the Commanders have coming up in 2024 next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Kevin Sheehan has made a habit over his radio career of having some fun with the schedule release, which is funny because then we have Kevin on schedule release day. I'm like, Kevin, this is your day. And he's like, not really. And I'm like, no, you did this to yourself. It's your fault. But today, Kevin did his mock schedule. The actual schedule will come out a week from today. And the way we're able to do this, of course, is that the NFL has long announced the Commanders and everyone else's opponents for the 2024 season. It's just what order are they in? Do you have any primetime games, et cetera, et cetera. So Kevin put his schedule out today, and there's a bunch of other interesting games. Some games we already know. Including the season opener in Brazil that the Eagles are taking part in. Obviously, the Chiefs will open the actual season at home because they're the defending champs. There's like all those things that we already know. We also know the Commanders won't be going international because the only two international slots remaining are against teams who are the home team that's already been announced, and those teams are not on the Commanders' schedules as away opponents. So there's like all these things you can kind of piece together, but generally speaking, we don't know. We don't know the full thing. So, and I think, let me ask you this before just like looking blind. I did this earlier today. I haven't actually looked. You transcribed Kevin's schedule for me here. How many primetime games do you think the Commanders will have this season?
Is this before or after listening to Kevin's thing?
How many did you think before?
I would probably say maybe like 3 or 4. Something like not a lot of games.
Yeah. I mean, I would say 4 is a lot.
Oh, 4 is a lot, you think?
Yeah, primetime games? Yeah, that's
like
that's
Thursday.
A lot.
I think we played on Thursday twice. We played on Thanksgiving. This was last year. That's 3 times already.
They played Chicago on Thursday night.
We played somebody else on Thursday, too.
And then they just played the Cowboys on Thanksgiving.
Oh, that was a Thursday. Oh.
Yeah. They just had the 2 last year, I'm pretty sure. They were mostly 1 o'clock. There's, the 4:25 game when you're out in San Francisco. There's a thought that they might have a night game at the last week of the season because of the NFC East. And, like, was it going to be on the line? Does that put you potentially at 4 o'clock? Like, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, Commanders weren't in high demand. This year it's different. They have the number 1 pick. I think there's 2 to 3 games that I have circled. I think one of the division games could definitely be, and I think there's basically 100% chance that the Bears game is in primetime.
Jaden versus Caleb.
Yeah, I think there's 100% chance that's in primetime.
Okay.
So, all right, here's Kevin's mock schedule, and let's see how many he's got. Giants, week 1, 4:25. That's interesting. I kind of feel like that game would still be a 1 o'clock game, but I could see them opening with the Giants.
He had said it's going to be one of those like double headers where they're the second game, so they're not the game that. But in our market, wouldn't they be on TV technically?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe he thinks, do they not want the Jets and Giants playing at the same time? Like, are they opening home? I don't know. I don't know why that game would be 4:25, other than it's the New York and DC markets and Jaden's debut. Like, that could be a good thing, or that could be a big thing potentially. But yeah, he's got the Bears game. Week 2, Monday Night Football. I think that game screams Monday Nighter. I also don't think it'll be that early.
Woo.
Because I don't know that they're going to be confident enough that Daniels is starting by week 2. And what they don't want is Caleb Williams versus Marcus Mariota.
That's fair. That's smart.
So I would say that's potentially later in the season. But does scream Monday Night Football. Now, do I think Jaden will start week 1? Probably. But if I'm ESPN and the league, I don't know that I want to risk that.
Yeah.
He's got this home versus the Steelers week 3, at the Eagles week 4, 1 o'clock, and he's got an early bye week. Oh, I hate that. That sucks.
His reasoning for it, the last 2 years, we've had extremely late bye weeks.
How about a bye in the middle of the season? What about that, NFL? What about like week 7? What about week 8?
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Sure would. So then Week 6, home versus the Falcons, 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins revenge game. That's interesting. I think that could be a 425 game potentially. Then he's got the Ravens Sunday Night Football. Commanders making Sunday Night Football. If it's against the Ravens, you got kind of the Beltway battle element to it. I kind of dig that. I think that could be possible. I do feel like that screams more Monday night than Sunday night. I would also have to see what the rest of the schedule is for that week, but we don't know that either. Week 8, Buccaneers, that's a 1 p.m.er. Home versus Carolina, that's a 1 p.m.er. At the Bengals, that's a kind of game that if it's that late in the season, I might want to push that a little bit down if I'm the NFL and get into that flex range.
I think that's a 1 p.m. game.
But it's probably a 1 p.m. game. Home versus the Cowboys, 425. The Cowboys get that 425 window all the time.
Oh, no.
Week 12, he's got home versus the Browns. Okay, and then Kevin did the thing that I kind of feel like might happen for the Commanders this year, which is that they are the third Thanksgiving game. And then instead, last year, they played the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, but the Cowboys always double up. The Cowboys also always go Thursday for Thursday. I feel like the Commanders could be that second Thursday game.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd go, he's got it going home versus the Eagles on Thanksgiving. That feels 100% a possibility. And then at the Cowboys the following week. Here's my beef with that, though, is he's then got week 15 at Arizona, week 16 versus the Titans, 17 at the Saints, 18 versus the Giants at home. The league has tended towards more division games late in the season. So I think the idea that one of their last 4 games is against the NFC East is way too conservative on that front. I think the Eagles game probably moves into week 16 or 17 at the very least. If
Instead
not
of week 4.
If not, that Thanksgiving game. What if instead of home versus Bears Monday Night Football week 2, it's Bears Commanders on Thanksgiving? That feels feasible to me.
So what game would you move out?
So then you move the Saints or the Titans up to week 2, 1 o'clock. Who cares?
Okay.
Maybe if you're getting real juicy and real conspiratorial, week 16, home versus Tennessee. Marcus Mariota potentially still starting
week
against
2
his former
Titans.
his former team. Could just see that. The Saints game, just move it wherever. But I do feel like one of these other Cowboys or Eagles games is going to be week 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there, if not 2 of them bumping back into that last range. Because that's how they've done it.
Yeah.
Last year, let's see. Commanders 20.
I know we played the Giants twice. It was a Giants game.
3
and then
of the
another
last
game,
5
then
games,
Giants.
I think were at home.
And the year before.
Yeah, so last year. Well, actually, no, I guess it was. I guess they did cluster them more in the middle there last year because it was Dallas, San Francisco, the Jets, and LA. Because there was the year they did 2, week 17 and 18 were both division games. Oh, yeah. And the NFC West got that last year, I think, outside of, I guess, the Niners. But maybe they will spread it out a little bit more.
I will hope they did, just because you don't want to have a whole month of just beating up, your division rival. That's brutal enough.
I mean, I kind of dig it, though, because then the division is on the line by definition because each game's worth double.
Yeah, but when you just want it to be the last game or,
No, because, let's say you're down, you've got 3 games to go, and you're basically round robin the last 2 weeks. You're down, a team that's down 2 games in the standings in the division could all of a sudden pull even. Maybe win on a tiebreaker.
But don't you sort of not necessarily you want to be fresh, but
if everyone's doing it, right? You do it for the entire league.
Okay. If you're doing it for the whole league, yeah. I think it definitely makes the last 2 weeks more interesting. Because I'm not gonna lie, by the time we got there last year, we were just counting down, Ron Rivera being out. kind of thing.
We count that down after the Bears game in October last year.
Oh yeah, that too.
Which, by the way, also feels like could be the annual. It'll be the third year in a row. Week 5 against the Bears. Thursday night football.
Dang, that would be insane. I like that though.
It could be, definitely could be. I feel like that's gonna be a Monday nighter. Ravens is definite Sunday night possibility, and then one of the division games. But I do feel like the Week 14 at Cowboys. Or maybe they let the Commanders host that. Maybe the Cowboys actually have to go on the road instead of going Thanksgiving and then at home again back to back. That'd be nice.
Have we ever hosted a Thanksgiving game?
Yes, I was there. 2017, I believe, against the Giants.
Oh, not against Dallas. I feel like Dallas plays at home.
Dallas does host it Thanksgiving every year.
Oh, okay.
But we were that third game. But I'm saying the week after.
Oh, okay.
Typically they host back to back. What if they had to actually go on the road for that one? The funniest thing, I'll tell this story. The funny Thanksgiving press box story from my days on the beat covering Thanksgiving at FedEx Field. Next on the Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Quick story time, and then we'll tell you what's coming up on the show tomorrow and hit real things real people said into real microphones. So we were just going through Kevin Sheehan's mock schedule. If you want to hear Kevin's full thoughts on it, of course, check out the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. No, not that one, the other one, which you can check out in the free Odyssey app and wherever you get your podcasts. But there was one Commanders home game on Thanksgiving, which Kevin predicts this year that they'll play on Thanksgiving. I think he has it at Philadelphia. And this is, of course, under previous ownership and previous PR staff. And Tony Wiley, the famed / infamous head of public relations at the time for the Commanders, was just so insistent that we tried the food in the press box because they had attempted to cook Thanksgiving dinner. Not like the press box, not like the press relations staff, like the people who cooked the food at FedEx.
Oh, okay.
So whatever catering company they use. And for those that don't know, I used to work in Dallas. My job before I got to DC in 2015, I've been here for a while, whatever. But like I worked for ESPN Radio in Dallas, and the years that I worked there, I went to the game on Thanksgiving because I couldn't go home. The Cowboys always played on Thanksgiving, and I wanted to be able to have a good Thanksgiving meal. And I was also like, I was single. I could have probably gotten an invite to a friend's Thanksgiving, but my family was in South Carolina. So I was like, I just go to the game. And why don't I go to the game? This is awesome. And then sometimes I would fly home on Friday, and then my family would have Thanksgiving and whatever. But Jerry Jones and the Cowboys put on a tremendous Thanksgiving spread every year. Like really genuinely good food. I actually looked forward to going, not just because I'm at the game that everyone's watching on TV and it's cool to be there, but I knew I was going to get good food. The food at FedEx Field was always terrible in the press box. That is the worst Thanksgiving food I've ever had in my entire life. Turkey was dry. The selection was awful. It was so Dan Snydery. And Tony was just like, y'all gotta try the food. Y'all try the food. Y'all try the food. And we're just like, yeah, man, it's great.
It's painfully average.
Thanks for trying to cook us Thanksgiving dinner. I will say, happy to say that the food in the press box since Josh Harris bought the team is way better than it used to be. So that amongst the upgrades, not only is the dining around now Commanders Field better, but in the press box they treat us a little better nowadays too, which is great.
That's love.
But Jesus, I just never forget Tony. Oh, y'all see the food? Y'all see the food? You see what we did? You try the food? Yeah, dude, we saw it. It's turkey on Thanksgiving. Do you want a cookie? They're over there and they're dry and terrible.
Gotta bring some salad.
There was salad. Salad was probably there and dry and not dry, but wilty and just imagine the worst Thanksgiving food. Yeah. Imagine one that if you went up to your friend's house and they gave it to you, you just have to smile politely and be like,
"Can I get
thanks
a piece
for
of bread?"
inviting me.
Yeah.
Ordering your Uber Eats, your pizza, your whatever under the table. Yeah. Not great, Bob.
Real things.
We're not gonna be so this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Set into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, so earlier in the week, we hit quite a bit of the Tom Brady, or no, actually, we actually didn't get to play a lot of it. We want to just do an hour of real things tomorrow. We could just go back to the Brady roast from the weekend. But now people are starting to tell stories from the Brady roast. And Julian Edelman, on his podcast, talked about the moment in the green room when they were holding court with Bill Belichick And none other than Robert Kraft walked in.
Pre-show, we're in the green room. Randy, Drew, me, Gronk.
Yeah.
We were just chilling in there. Bill's opening up. He's having fun. He's talking war stories. We're talking rookies. Doing the shit we know what Bill's all about, but it was like amplified because he was excited to see guys because he doesn't have a job anymore.
And then Kraft walks in.
That's what I was about to just...
Right? Yeah, and then Kraft walks in.
Tension in that room, though.
It was real.
Good cut.
It was very real. It was very real. Belichick's kind of holding court. Well, as he's in the middle of the story, Kraft walks in, and so you guys all go over to say hi to Kraft. The last man standing is my bro, and he's like, well, Bill's telling the story. If I leave, then he's telling the story to nobody because everybody's over saying hi to Kraft.
I was so awkward. I was watching Coach, and I tried to give Coach a heads up. I see Kraft walk in. I'm like, yo, Coach. This locker room shit, like 5-0, 5-0. Like, of course he didn't fucking see it. And he came in, and I was like, oh, shit, this could be some fireworks. I just walked away. I didn't want to be in there.
I think that's really telling that Julian Edelman was like, I then left. I had to get out of there. It's got to be bad, bro.
Good gracious.
Also, doesn't Julian Edelman sound like just the best teammate?
Nah, he does. He sounds like an awesome guy.
Coach. Hey. 5-0, 5-0, 5-0.
Watch your 6.
Yeah. Julian Edelman does seem like a fantastic teammate. That's it. And that's all for our show today. Never read the comments and more